film club to seek out the help of Seidu Yakumo, a reclusive reputed who is able to interact with ghosts and spirits. She asks him to help, recounting that after a test of courage in the old school building's forbidden room, her friend called Mickey was possessed by a ghost and hospitalized, while another decided to end itself. When he charges her 25,000 yen, she is skeptical. However, she changes her mind when it's revealed that he knows about her dead twin sister called Ayaka. They visit Mickey and Yakumo confirms that the ghosts of dead girls are indeed possessing her. They were likely killed in the old building. Later they learn from Professor Takeoka that another one of her friends committed suicide. Yakumo later walks her home remarking that there is no curse, they are being targeted by a human. They investigate the old school building and learn it is under Takeoka's management. They discover several female belongings and suspicion falls on the professor. Yakumo retrieves a cup used by Takeoka and gives it to his colleague, called Officer Godu, for DNA analysis. Haruka is kidnapped by Takeoka and at the same time Godu confirms that the DNA on the female belongings is a match for the professor's. With the help of Ayaka's ghost, Yakumo rescues Haruka and reveals his red eye that allows him to communicate with spirits, which Haruka remarks is beautiful. Takeoka then flees and sets the school building on fire, but he is quickly apprehended by Godu. As the two are trapped on the roof, Yakumo guesses that Haruka entered the old building to seek out her sister. She had been jealous her sister, so while playing ball one day she deliberately threw it harder than usual, and Ayaka is hit by a truck and dies, filling Haruka with regret. When she laments that she probably hates her, he allows her to speak to her using his powers, and the two sisters reconcile and embrace each other. Meanwhile, a mysterious red-eyed man instructs a doctor, called Aichi, to do as he is told to see his daughter again. After appeasing the spirits in Mickey's body, Haruka remarks that speaking to a spirit never occurred to her. Yakumo expresses his dislike of forced exorcisms and his disdain for bogus psychics. She asks for more time to pay the 25,000 yen fee, however he tells her that Mickey's father had already paid her, so their contract ends here. While working part-time, she meets a businessman called Iri and his assistant Kunamatsu. She overhears them speak about a cursed fox shrine, and Kunamatsu explains that they are currently working to merge the city's two fox shrines into one. Haruka pays a visit to the shrine and is startled by a fox-masked ghost. She runs into Isshin, who introduces himself as Yakumo's uncle, noticing one of his eyes are red, and asks if he can also see ghosts, but he explains it is just a contact lens so that Yakumo does not feel alone. She also meets Nao, Yakumo's deaf cousin. Haruka chases after Yakumo and sees him talking to another girl. She passes by the fox shrine again and finds Iri by the statue. Suddenly the searchlights explode and a girl's laugh is heard, and Yakumo pushes her out of harm's way. He explains that this is not the work of a ghost but by human. He points to a nearby shed and Kunamatsu emerges. Kunamatsu explains that Iri had planned to elope with a girl called Kuniko, with whom his parents did not approve of. He dispatched a messenger to have her wait by the Eastern Fox Shrine, but he told her to wait at the West by accident. Although he realized the mistake early on, he was stubborn and continued to wait. A year later, she married another man and died of tuberculosis. His attempt to unify the two shrines was his way of atonement, but Yakumo points that Kuniko is still waiting, still wearing the fox mask. She appears before Iri and the two reconcile. Later, Yakumo explains to Haruka that he was asked by Kimi, the granddaughter of Kuniko, to investigate the fox spirit reports. A journalist called Mikoto gives Godu a photo of a garage showing the ghost of a young boy. He searches for Yakumo but finds Haruka instead. Yakumo arrives soon after to ask what they want, and Haruka describes how while being driven home by her assistant manager Tatsuya, they entered a tunnel filled with malevolent spirits, but he managed to remain calm. She asks him to check if any ghosts attached to them, to which he agrees. Godu shows him the spirit photo and explains that it is a photo of a garage owned by Toru, a chop shop owner linked to various crimes, and we discover that the boy's ghost in the photo went missing 2 months ago. They arrive at the garage and begin digging, and they find the boy's dead body. An autopsy performed by Hato confirms that the boy was struck by a car but likely did not die until he was buried alive. Haruka brings Tatsuya to be cleared of ghosts, but Yakumo finds it odd that he looked surprised when he sees the spirit photo from earlier despite reportedly being unfazed by ghosts. He reports this matter to Godu, who affirms his fears. Toru is arrested and named Tatsuya as the driver who hit the boy and conspired in his premature burial. The boy's ghost possesses Tatsuya while Haruka is in the car, so Godu and Yakumo give chase. He attempts to verbally convince him to leave, but the boy refuses. They soon approach the dark tunnel and Godu manages to slow down the car. The boy finally agrees to stop the car, but he is taken by the spirits in the tunnel. Yakumo is frustrated he was unable to save the boy. He can only communicate with them. Haruka pays her respects outside the tunnel as do Isshin and Nao. He reveals he named Yakumo as such because it means overlapping clouds, and had hoped he would overcome the many challenges caused by his striking red eye, and would one day be clear as the sky. As the serial murder of high school girls continues, Goto is transferred to the Unsolved Crimes Unit alongside his new subordinate called Yuyuteru. He receives a call from the chief of police to save his daughter. Meanwhile, Haruka continues to visit Yakumo much to his annoyance. He later remarks that people react to his red eye in two ways, out of fear or out of a desire to harness its power. Goto and Yuyuteru arrive asking for his assistance, while Haruka sneaks out to investigate the request of her friend Mayuko. Goto explains that 5 days ago Makoto was found unconscious on the street next to Takashi, a doctor-turned-drug dealer. He appeared to have died from a heart attack, suspected to be a result of his drug experiments. Meanwhile, Haruka visits the riverbank and sees a gravestone for a girl named Ayaka. She sees her ghost in the river telling her to please stop it, and she falls into the water. Yakumo finds that Makoto is possessed by the ghost of Takashi. It appears that he has possessed her body out of a strong desire to live, making suicide his cause of death extremely unlikely. They visit Hato for more information on Takashi, but all they can find is a notebook and a few keys, as well as a photo of a girl Ayaka. They meet Dr. Aichi to learn more about Takashi, but he realizes that Yakumo is the son of Azusa whom he attended to when he was born. His mother tried to kill him 10 years ago, with the only memento being the necklace he tore from her neck. He learns that he was the doctor who delivered him, and when he learns his mother was terrified of his red eye at birth, he sullenly storms out. He later tries to throw out the necklace by the river, but Haruka stops him, reasoning that she was still his mother. She asks him not to carry every burden himself, and the two embrace. After investigating Ayaka's grave by the riverbank again, Yakumo warns Haruka not to do something so dangerous again. They return to Aichi, where he explains that Takashi was a close family friend and his junior in medical school. Ayaka is Aichi's daughter and she died from a river flash flood. Yakumo asks him if he is trying to resurrect her, to which he replies, "Is that so wrong to wish for?" They investigate the use of the keys. Yuyuteru finds a duffel bag full of cash, while Goto and Yakumo find the missing girl inside a floodgate maintenance room. Takashi is named the culprit of the serial murders and kidnappings, but the issue regarding Makoto has yet to be solved. Hato shows Goto and Yakumo photos of the victims, who strangely had peaceful looks on their faces despite drowning to death. Goto spots another photo showing the red-eyed man, and they realize Aichi is involved with him. As Haruka is tased by one of Aichi's accomplices, Yakumo and Goto race to another floodgate as instructed, where they find Aichi throwing Haruka over the railing. She plummets to the river below despite Goto's best efforts, but Yakumo just manages to save her. Later, he brings him and the possessed Hijikata to Aichi's clinic. Aichi explains that the red-eyed man told him that if a girl his daughter's age died, then she could possess the body. He confesses that Takashi was not a junior but someone he had hired to kidnap the girls. However, Yakumo reveals the photos, and with Haruka's testimony, the grisly truth is revealed. Every time a girl was sent to the depths, his daughter indeed possessed his body, but only to ease their suffering, and she soon succumbed to the fear of dying once more. Every time Aichi attempted to resurrect his daughter, he was merely killing her again and again. Hence why her one wish was always, "Please stop this." Satisfied, Takashi leaves Hijikata's body, and as they pay their respects at Ayaka's grave, Yakumo sees the red-eyed man, his father, across the river. Haruka's friends tell her to dress up more so she can find herself a boyfriend, and they tease her about Yakumo. While she denies seeing him as a love interest, but she sees her friends pointing a guy in her direction. She brings Yakumo a case, and at the man's behest his apartment is haunted by a ghost. They visit the real estate agency that rented him the apartment at an extremely low price. The agent explains that a previous tenant, called Kimiko, died of a respiratory illness and has haunted the room ever since. The pair question one of her coworkers, who described her as far too serious and refrained from dressing up or wearing makeup. At the man's apartment, they find a small envelope hidden behind a mirror. Kimiko's ghost tells them to burn it without looking at it. They return to the temple and prepare a pyre, but Haruka breaks the promise and looks inside the envelope, finding a photo of her dressed up in fancy clothes. She realizes that she never dressed up for anyone but herself. She apologizes to Kimiko's ghost before burning the photo, who then reveals herself and tells her to do her best. Later, Yakumo compliments now on her new cardigan after he had ignored it earlier. Haruka playfully pokes him in the side, revealing him to be ticklish, causing herself and now to laugh. Haruka invites Yakumo to watch her perform for the music club and says he'll drop by if he feels bored. Meanwhile, his father sets his plan into motion. Makoto investigates an eerie mansion where she finds a girl collapsed on the floor who cries out for help. However, her face shows she has something else up her sleeve. The matter is brought to Yakumo, who is familiar with the mansion as the site of the Nanace murders, where a family was brutally killed 15 years ago. However, their daughter Miyuki was strangely missing. He agrees to cooperate, and they watch the video with Makoto, who informs them that the footage was taken by a reporter named Yukiko. Upon fast-forwarding the clip, something about the ghost unnerves Yakumo and he leaves without a word. He calls Haruka, apologizing that he won't be able to make it to her concert, and boards the Shinkansen. Haruka wonders where has gone, as does Goto, and neither are able to reach him. Goto meets with his superior Captain Miyagawa, and she recounts her experience as a first responder to the Nanace murders. She had always wondered if her attacker was human or something far more sinister. Goto reassures her that they simply have to find and arrest Takeda, their prime suspect. The two pay a visit to Yukiko, but Goto seems to recognize her from somewhere. They then go to the Nanace mansion, but due to Yuyutaru's cowardice, Goto enters alone. He is then tased by one of Yakumo's father's associates and is abducted. Yuyutaru becomes despondent over his inaction, and an angry Miyagawa tells him that Goto's wife, called Atsuko, had asked him to take care of her husband. She departs but says that if anything happens to Goto, she will never forgive him. Meanwhile, Yakumo visits a familiar house where he is attacked by the same assailant who tased Goto. Takeda, the prime suspect of the Nanace murders, is chased by police through an alleyway. Meanwhile, Makoto, Yuyutaru, and Haruka all arrive at the temple and meet with Isshin. Upon seeing the clip, Isshin is horrified to see that the ghost is Azusa, his sister and Yakumo's mother. Yuyutaru has lost his nerve and suggests that they bring this matter to the police instead, and Haruka voices his disapproval of him. Yuyutaru storms out, followed by Makoto, who manages to talk some sense into him. Meanwhile, Haruka visits the grave of Akane, who was Yakumo's middle school teacher. He blamed himself for her death and once attempted to stab out his red eye. They regroup and reconcile at the house, and Haruka finds a critical clue. The footage was not from the Nanace mansion, but somewhere else. Yuyutaru and Makoto both confirm that the girl known as Yukiko was an alias, and none of the information she provided was true. Isshin shows them a letter written by Keiko, Haruka's mother, to Azusa. He explains that Azusa was once abducted by a man and she was aided by Keiko during her escape. At the time, both of them were pregnant with Haruka and Yakumo, and Isshin is all the more convinced that they are connected by fate. They open the letter and they are shocked to learn that Azusa's fiancé was none other than Takeda, the murderer. After bringing Haruka home, Yuyutaru begs Miyagawa for files regarding Takeda so he can search for Goto. She instructs him to meet her in the 4th floor bathroom, where she gives him all the information he needs. Meanwhile, the assailant has returned, planning to abduct Haruka, but Takeda appears, with the entire police force on his tail, forcing her to retreat. In his mind, he has promised to always protect Yakumo, who is now currently tied up and beaten. Haruka awakens, and she is informed by Takeda that Yakumo is in Nagano, and warns her that people are after her. She leaves and boards a train for Nagano. Yuyutaru and Makoto visit Hato, who uses facial reconstruction software to recreate the face of the missing Nanace girl, Miyuki. To their shock, they realize Miyuki is Yukiko and associated with Yakumo's father. They interview Miyuki's old teacher, and they realize that there must be a hidden room in the mansion. They rescue Goto, and he tells them that they plan to kill Haruka in front of Yakumo. When they ask him how he knows this, he explains that Takeda's ghost told him. They race to Nagano, where Keiko has driven Haruka to Yakumo's old house. She finds him in a precarious state, but they manage to limp away from the house. They are caught in the act by Miyuki, who points a crossbow at them. Yakumo sees Goto behind her and he stalls for time by asking who the real culprit of the Nanace murders was. She reveals it was her all along. As the child of her grandfather and mother, her father would often torture her in the hidden room. It was then that she met Yakumo's father and she was encouraged to murder her entire family. Goto restrains her, but the gambit fails as Yakumo's father cuts off their escape. Goto is tasered once more, but before Miyuki can shoot Haruka, the ghost of Azusa possesses her. Goto explains what Takeda had told him in the torture room. 15 years ago, he had met both her and Yakumo and proposed to her. But when he became the prime suspect for the Nanace murders, and when Yakumo's father said that his son would grow to be an ever bigger murderer, these feelings of fear prompted Azusa to try and kill her own son. Yakumo is glad to know that his mother never truly hated him, and was only manipulated into doing so. He reaffirms that he now has an undeniable bond with his friends, but his father is skeptical. Miyuki regains control of her body, shooting a gas pipe that allows them to escape. As they see the spirits of Azusa and Takeda off, his mother thanks them for everything. She tells Haruka that she gave her courage, and another secret message to Yakumo. Goto has reconciled with Atsuko, while Yakumo lazily attends Haruka's recital. Makoto learns of a ghost terrorizing the local hospital, and meets Isshin, who has come for a checkup regarding a headache. She brings this matter to Yakumo, who agrees to investigate. Makoto remarks that he has become much more approachable, but Haruka doubts this assessment. Yakumo visits Hato, Goto, and Yuyutaru. Hato shows him the photo he took of his father and remarks that he has a deathly aura about him. Later, Yuyutaru suspects Yuyutaru's father could be like Takeda, a ghost. Meanwhile, Isshin is diagnosed with a terrible brain disease and is given 6 months to live. Elsewhere, the police have arrested Miyuki, and Miyagawa hopes to interrogate her before headquarters can sweep her under the rug. Isshin meets a girl in a wheelchair who also has a terminal illness. He manages to encourage her and give her hope. He calls over Noah, and they learn that the girl's name is Yoshiko. He encourages the two to be friends in the meantime. Haruka visits Yakumo in the club room, and he shares his suspicions with Yuyutaru that his father could be a ghost. They head to the temple where Isshin shows them a package that Keiko has sent, containing several photos and albums. Several of them depict Yakumo as a baby, while others show when Haruka's sister was still alive. Isshin later reveals to Yakumo of his illness, and hopes to keep it a secret from now. Yakumo is visibly disheartened, and Isshin tells him to live his life to the fullest. Elsewhere, Godu and Yuyutaru interrogate Miyuki, who tells them that he plans to kill Isshin. Yakumo is shaken by the news of Isshin's illness, and he acts strange during their investigation of the hospital. Their phones are turned off, leaving Godu and Yuyutaru unable to contact them. The officers race back to the temple where they find Isshin, who is made aware of the plot to kill him. He asks Godu to take care of now if anything happens to him, having grown to trust the boorish officer. Yakumo's father appears, and Isshin knocks Godu out so he can have a chat with him inside. He explains that he once held a great grudge over him for hurting Azusa and leaving Yakumo with a deep-seated trauma, but such feelings have passed. As he tells him that Yakumo will never succumb to darkness, he is fatally stabbed. Meanwhile, Yakumo witnesses the ghost, but contrary to the reports, she begins apologizing to patients she has scared in the past. They then get a call from Yuyutaru informing them of the stabbing. Isshin is soon brought to the hospital, but the doctor declares him brain dead. This enrages Godu, who threatens to arrest him, but Yakumo tells him to calm down. Godu fulfills his promise to Isshin and takes Nao home with her, leaving Yakumo to watch over his uncle. Things become complicated when the lead investigator of the Nanace murders 15 years ago, in order to save face for naming Takeda as the culprit, releases a gag order on all things related to the crime, preventing the media and officers from reporting or writing about Isshin's stabbing or Miyuki's confession to the crime. Godu has Hato examine the temple for any clues relating to Yakumo's father, but it is just as suspected. With no traces whatsoever, they confirm that he is nothing but a ghost. He visits Miyuki in her cell, who is initially glad to see him again, but he ends up injuring her instead. Godu is ordered by Miyagawa to tend to Nao in her time of need, while Haruka gives Yakumo Isshin's red contact lens, which he had worn so that Yakumo would never feel picked on for having different eyes. Isshin is registered as an organ donor, but Yakumo refuses to give his consent as he has yet to see his ghost. However, he does see the ghost girl from earlier, and they follow it back to the room of the girl, Yoshiko. The doctor explains that her doctor, Sakakibara, tried everything he could, but unless she gets a transplant in 6 months, she will die. Yakumo's hatred begins to grow, unnerving Haruna. Haruka tells Godu that Yakumo has figured out the culprit behind the attack, but it is not his father. She tells him that he has become rather cold, and Godu remarks that he was like that in middle school. He says that he has changed drastically since then, and he credits Haruka for that change. Godu then gets a double whammy of disconcerting news. Miyuki has escaped, while Yakumo is spotted at the hospital, but not to visit Isshin. Yakumo visits Sakakibara, whom he accuses of leaving Isshin brain dead on purpose to force an organ transplant for Yoshiko. He reveals that he knows Yoshiko is his daughter, as well as other evidence that gives him the perfect opportunity to ensure that the transplant goes forward. Isshin denies everything, but it is soon apparent that he is the culprit. He feels from both him and Godu, but Yakumo cuts him off at the roof. Sakakibara sees nothing wrong with what he is doing, and he attacks Yakumo, but he fends him off. Yakumo's father soon appears, who feels hatred swelling in his son, especially at practical death of Isshin. Godu and the others soon make it to the roof. His father says his hatred is not enough and has Miyuki shoot a gun at one of his friends. Godu is fatally shot in the stomach, and just as planned, Yakumo's hatred spirals out of control, enabling him to possess his son's body. Miyuki explains to them that ordinarily, a ghost is unable to possess a body as two souls cannot occupy one space at the same time, but an exception is created if both souls share the same mental state at the time of possession. Miyuki embraces Yakumo, assuming the possession is complete, but he suddenly disarms her and fights her off. As she is held at gunpoint by Yuyutaru, it is revealed that Yakumo managed to fight off the possession, and his second red eye was Isshin's contact lens. Not wanting to be in a cycle of hatred, he finally consents to the organ transplant, on the condition that Sakakibara gives himself up to the pulse after. He drops to his knees, thanking him profusely. Yakumo's father's plan is foiled for now, but he remarks that as a ghost, he will exist for as long as his desire to possess his body is alive. He bids them farewell and disappears. Realizing she was just used all this time, Miyuki jumps off and escapes. They chase Miyuki, but she has now lost all will to live and she drives her car off of a winding road, ending herself. Meanwhile, Goto's organ transplants are successful. Although saddened that his uncle has died, Yakumo is comforted knowing it is what he would have wanted. The next day, the group gathers for Isshin's funeral. Miyuki's body has yet to be found and Hato remarks that Yakumo's father never committed any crimes himself, he merely convinced others to do it for him. Goto tells Yakumo that he and Netsuko plan to officially adopt him and now as their children, and he agrees. During the funeral reception, Yakumo suddenly walks off and Haruka follows him into the main temple, where he has a final conversation with Isshin telling him not to worry about him. And now, as the final candle is blown, tears stream down Yakumo's face as he recalls his uncle's last words, "Thanks for everything." In an epilogue, Goto has adjusted to his new role as a family man, taking more time off work. Makoto continues her work as a journalist, while Hato looks forward to more dissections. Yakumo and Haruka continue working together solving supernatural cases, and he silently thanks his uncle for everything he has done. And this brings the anime to an end. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on another video. Until next time, take care.